What's up, JEFusion fans? This is Philip and welcome back to another video. So, we are celebrating 5 years of SODO. Now, there have been other candy toy action figures Bandai has released for the Kamen Rider series, but it was 5 years ago that they started marketing these under the name SODO. And in this video, I will show you guys how much SODO has evolved over the past 5 years. So before we begin, I would like to remind everyone that these videos are not intended for viewers under 13 and we're not sponsored, so please be advised. Now, let's start the video. So first off, let's go with the very first series that had toys released under the SODO brand, which is Kamen Rider X8. Now, Kamen Rider X8 figures would set most of the tone for what SODO is going to be like moving forward. Now, of course, you can see here, this is the Muteki Gamer. Now, SODO Kamen Rider Saber, or sorry, X8. I love Saber so much. But anyway, yeah, X8 is the first one under the SODO line. Now, for the SODO series, X8 is the first figure to get 2 boxes for a single character. So, yeah, it all started with X8. So, you need 2 boxes to complete one Kamen Rider. So, you buy one with the body and you buy one with the armor and other accessories. Let's say the main body is on set A and the head, some armor parts, and this Gashakon key slasher, those are on set B. So buying either one of them only, does not complete the whole figure, and I think that was pointless. So you really had to buy both boxes in order to complete one figure. Now, there have been other figures before, like I've said, and X8 is the first candy toy rider, or with the SODO series, they would have this arm joint right here that would allow the arm to turn around, left and right. It's quite stiff, but you get the idea here. So just above the elbow, and also this thigh joint right here, which all previous candy toys or candy toy figures of Kamen Rider shows, they did not have these joints, so they did not have that much articulation. Now, with X8 though, they would release much later, like around the end of the series or just before it. So they would release the Dai Sodo, which, for one, actually allows the rider to have a waist motion. So here, like the torso is like just a single block of plastic, so it doesn't move at all. And it would later include an action base. So here, we do see a hole on Kamen Rider X8's back for the action base, but this figure does not have his own action base. So in the Daiso, though, only X8 level 2 and Kamen Rider Brave level 2 were released. But again, those two figures would have the waist movement and also the action base. So moving on to the next rider, which is Kamen Rider Build. So taking some points from the previous series, so Kamen Rider Build now has a movable waist, actually a removable waist, but that is the major difference in the figures. Now, the hands are also quite stiff here. Now, they also have the action base right here. So Kamen Rider Build would be the first series in the SODO line to have, uh, you know, to constantly include this one, especially with the armor set. So like set B, but you do get an action base with a sticker for the name of the rider. If you choose to put it there, you can do that. Now, with Kamen Rider Build, so they would also release a Dai Sodo series. So what is different is that they would introduce the removable hands. So you now have the option to keep these closed hands, which also serve as fists, and then you can also use the open hand for a more dynamic pose. And just a minor change, but they would also include stickers for the belt straps, which this one did not have. So the Daisodo would do that. Moving on to the next rider, which is Kamen Rider Go. So I put him on an action base. Now, speaking of the action base, uh, this is different from the one we had with Kamen Rider Build. So Kamen Rider Build had a much taller action base. However, with this one, you can't really you can attach it to the back of the figure, but it's not going to attach onto the base. Like it will look like it's floating. But with this shorter stock right here, you can attach the figure to the action base, and then there's also a peg right here that carried over from this one. So you can attach both these pegs for a more stable figure, but even just this one is enough. And then you can still make it look like your rider is standing on the action base properly. So that's one change that they have. So going back to the figure, now Kamen Rider Geo Sodo figures were the first riders, or this was the first line to consistently put an option of either the fists, aka holding hand, or the open hands here. But generally the proportion is the same. Now Kamen Rider uh, Geo would have like very specific lines that or re-releases that have like a transparent plastic at the back of the head, so you can put like a flashlight behind, and then when you turn it on, the eyes would light up because the eyes are also made of that same transparent plastic as well. And they would also have like their feet sealed with a special part here so that they have heels. But that would be like the Daisodo version, and that one they did not really release consistently. So that was just exclusive to that particular set of riders. Like for the Daisodo of Geo, only Kamen Rider Geo, like the base form, Kamen Rider Gates and Kamen Rider Was were released. But yeah, this one is very nice, I say. Now moving on, so we have Kamen Rider 01. Now, the biggest change that I've seen based on the figure alone is that they have, these legs uh, in a different proportion. Like they look much bigger, but they're kind of built around this hip joint right here. So it kind of looks like an SHF proportion. And then they would also kind of introduce somewhat here maybe, yeah. So Kamen Rider 02's action base, so they would introduce later these holes on the action base so you can put your extra hands on it. Now, originally with Kamen Rider Go, they did not have these holes. So for the extra hands, you either have to keep the box that you bought them in, so you have a box where you can store your extra hands. You can also put them in a different container, but otherwise, if you don't do that, those hands are going to be lost. So with the Kamen Rider 02, or 01 rather, because I'm holding 02 right here, you do have the option to use these holes to put the hands on, and then there's one here for any accessory that might fit. So yeah, and they also introduced these connection points, so you can connect different action bases together if you want. So if you're going for multiple riders, that's fine. Now let's go to Kamen Rider Saber. So I have Saber right here. Now the biggest change that I've noticed is the removable arms. They are removable right from the shoulder. And the joint for the shoulder, as you can see here, is elongated. So if you put the shoulder back, so it is capable of backwards and forwards movement. So like you can actually move it like a shoulder naturally. I think that's the biggest change that SODO did for their Kamen Riders. And Kamen Rider Saber like released a lot of auxiliary parts or option parts, bonus parts for different riders. And I don't have them, but if you buy the figures for Legiel, Zuos, and Storius, they would have a special right hand. So basically, attachment parts that. So normally the hands are like this, and then they would have hands that are kind of slanted. So you basically have a more natural like sword handling going on. But yeah, uh, they don't have it right here. But again, they do have those option parts. Now, before we move on to the most recent rider, I am going to talk about the SODO Chronicle. Now, I have here Kamen Rider Ryuki, and the SODO Chronicle originally came out in 2019. I believe the first one was Kamen Rider Double, and I think even the SODO Chronicle line has evolved since then. Now, because it does have SODO in its name, I've decided to include it in this video. But looking at this particular figure right here, this, well, it does have the SODO name. Again, it is a SODO Chronicle because SODO Chronicle is dedicated to, or dedicated for, uh, older series, So this particular figure already feels a lot different. Now, let me show you first the head. I mean, it the neck comes off. Okay, so this is a single part. Now, the neck joint is actually attached here, but yeah, this one is already much different. And the arms kind of similar to Kamen Rider Saber. But what blew me the most is this waist action right here. It can do ab crunches for days. Another thing that I noticed with this one is the holding hands for accessories. Now, typically, the hands are solid, and you either just insert the accessory on either the top or the lower attachment point, or the hole if you want to call it. But here this is an actual grip hand, which is kind of similar to what you would find in an SHF, or probably even SODO, because I think those do it like that as well. This hand is made of a softer plastic, closer to vinyl, I would say. So you can, again, so this is a weapon. I did not, you can see he's gripping it like you would equip it on an SHF. I would say that's very, very different. And with this line, for example, with Kamen Rider Ryuki, they do have a lot of other hand parts. So especially for the right hand, you can pose him with a card. So with all those extra parts, it already feels like a miniature SHF in a way, although technically the miniaturized versions of the SHFs I would say would still be the Shodo line, but I do think that's a completely different toy line already, and I don't have one to show you, but I think this already feels like a completely different beast altogether. Still, very impressive how far they've come, and I do think that the SODO Chronicle had been somewhat of an experimental bed for other concepts that would be used later in other Kamen Riders. So let's say, for example, Kamen Rider Den O had its weapons, attached on different points on the hand. Let's say, going back to Kamen Rider Saber, so you do see this pommel right here. This is already a separate part. Now, even without this, I mean, I can still use the rest of the Haoken cross saber, but uh, again, this is somewhat inspired, and maybe kind kind of with the 02 right here, although technically these are two different weapons, not two parts of the same weapon, but uh, again, a lot of things came from SODO Chronicle. I did mention earlier with Kamen Rider Saber, so the hand parts that are slanted, again, for the slashing attacks, for more natural slashing attack. I think those hands also were included in the Kamen Rider Gaim uh, SODO Chronicle lineup, because again, those things, right? Those swords, they do look more natural when held like this, right? So that's maybe coming up in later uh, toy lines. But now let's look at the latest rider. So Kamen Rider Revise. Now, just Kamen Rider Revi though, because it's the one I have, but I'm also talking about the show. And a lot of things have been reused, but I would say it does feel like proportionally different. I don't know, but it again, it does feel like it also uses a lot of new concepts at the same time. But I think the biggest change with the revised lineup, okay, where was it? I would say the action base. Now look at this one. This is the hanger where you put the shoulder parts when they're not in use. Compare it to something like the older action bases starting from Kamen Rider Go up to Kamen Rider Saber. These parts were right here. And when I and this part is also elongated. Now, let's say I attach it right here, right? So it looks fine. it looks fine. And another difference is that it has more holes on the side, so you can attach more parts when not in use. So uh, you still have these holes right here, but here you can attach, again, like weapons or other accessories, like I've said. But yeah, I think the most important part that they changed is this one, because let's use this base from Oma Geo. So yeah, it doesn't it this looks kind of awkward, I would say, like hitting the butt almost, barely, but almost. So it doesn't look right, but placing it lower and making it look smaller, it's like it's almost not even there, especially when you face it forward. So comparing it with the one I have from Kamen Rider Build, now this is actually facing forward because you can see the sticker right here, but this is how I use it. And if I do it like this when I put on the figure, now this is definitely going to hit the back of the figure, which is not nice. And especially with this long peg right here, no, 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 no. That's why I have it facing sideways like so. But then again, I'm not able to use this, so I basically attach my figure right here. But, you know, this new action base does solve a lot of issues with that. I would say, however, like what's different about this figure is, again, the proportion looks more realistic, I would say. Maybe this could be better. Like looking at the figure itself, I think this is better than the Revice Remix figure. Although the advantage of that is that you do have weapon accessories and you can combine it. You can combine both Revi and Vice. But uh, other than that, again, like looking at the figure by itself, it's definitely much better. Like, look at the bright metallic blue, like radical 90s pink and blue color scheme. I mean, look at this. Looks rad. So, yeah, I'm really excited to see, what kind of other new things that SODO would bring in the near future. So maybe some improvements that they would have with the revise figures would carry on to the others, to the next rider, just as how like small evolutions, let's say for example in the Kamen Rider X8 SODO lineup with the Dai SODO, they carried on to build, improvements in build carried on to GO. And well, for Kamen Rider 01 going forward, I think they've had differences that were not in the previous lineups, but especially with the SODO Chronicles and everything that they've done to improve and make this different from your regular SODO, I think they would apply those concepts to future SODO figures as well. And I'm excited to see that. So that's it for this video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. If you like, please hit that like button. Share this video with your friends. Of course, leave a comment if you like. And don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you get the latest from JEFusion. This has been Philip, and I'll see you in the next video. Happy 5 years of SODO!